Welcome back to the Make Math Happen podcast. I am your host, Laneshia, and today's episode marks the final part of our instructional framework series. We've talked about activating the lesson, navigating the instruct portion with purpose, and using that pre teaching or acceleration to provide access to students. Today, we're bringing it all home with the final phase of the lesson, and that's the closure. Closure is not optional, it's the moment where everything clicks. It's where students consolidate what they've learned, name what stuck, and connect the dots between the goal and the work they've done. Think of the closure as the yang to the yin of the activate. Activate sets the purpose, y'all. Closure seals the learning. Brooke Powers from Open Up Resources once said something like, skipping the lesson synthesis is like skipping the end of the movie before you find out how it all came together. And she's right. If we skip the closure, we rob students of the moment where the math becomes theirs. Closure is the time where big ideas settle. Strategies rise to the top, students get a chance to reflect and say, here's what I understand now, and teachers get the data they need to move instruction forward. I cannot emphasize enough how this part of your lesson is not optional, guys. We have to get to a point in our lesson where we are providing students with that opportunity to make sense of what they've experienced. If we don't, we're not truly connecting the dots. So what does the closure actually sound like in a classroom? First, you revisit the goal for the day. Today, we worked on dividing fractions with and without models. Our goal was to compare linear functions using multiple representations. Then, you invite students into meaning making. Let's revisit the strategies that they used. Let's contrast and compare two different student approaches. Highlight one or two mathematical big ideas that surfaced throughout today's lesson. Give students the opportunity to talk about that, to think about that, right? This is a great moment to build or extend your anchor chart. Add models, vocabulary, or key connections that you want students to carry with them. You can also give students structured time to reflect. And they need that time to think, y'all, whether it's individually, whether it's with a partner, whether you're providing sentence stems for them because you want to give them more access, you want to give them the tools they need to use to articulate the things that they're thinking. You can provide them with a quick write, right? With those sentence stems, now they can start to construct sentences that describe their experiences, that describe what they learned. You can ask them questions like, what strategy made the most sense to you today? How did today's work connect to what we learned last week? Where do you feel more confident now? And we're asking these questions as points of reflection. These are not the actual exit ticket, although they could be. They could be. But this is where we're allowing students to think about what makes sense today so that we can bring it all together. We can make the learning visible for them. We can highlight those big ideas before we move into that exit ticket. Okay, so it's going to take time to really intentionally plan this part out because you want to know what you're going to say. You want to know what questions you're going to ask, right? You want to know the things that you want to highlight. If it's a strategy, because you're looking at multiple representations, then that's what you want to make sure that you're looking for as students are working, right? And in another episode, we're going to have to talk about 5 practices again so that we can become proficient in that, because that is a really good strategy to use to allow you to highlight student work and allow them to make those connections and synthesize it. It's right there in that routine. After the consolidation comes the evidence. If you know me personally, you know I'm all about the data. How do you know that the learning stuck? How do you know that students reach the goal? And it's important that we are not talking abstractly, right? We need to be clear and descriptive and specific about the evidence that lets us know that students reach the goal. Otherwise, we're really just kind of throwing things at the wall and hoping something sticks with maybe blinders on and can't tell if it did or not. Okay. So exit tickets are short, they're targeted, and they are aligned directly to the day's objective. They're not a quiz, they're not punishment, they are a diagnostic in real time. I am trying to figure out if you got it or not, if you're making progress or not. Okay. And this part is critical. The purpose of the exit ticket is not to grade students, it's to guide your teaching, right? So the data you collect should tell you who is ready for the next step, who's ready for the next lesson, right? Who needs small group support, which concepts need to be retaught, what kind of homework should be meaningful. And I'm going to pause right here on the homework. There's a lot of debate about the use of homework, whether or not we should be assigning it or not. I think we should be, but the homework needs to be meaningful. It doesn't need to be like the homework we assigned back in the day where we're giving kids pages and pages of odd questions to complete. Because, I mean, frankly, a lot of kids are not going to do it. They're just not going to do it. But if we can make the homework more meaningful, if it's something that is targeted for that specific student, we open the door for more students to be open to doing it, right? We open the door for more parents to be open to supporting their kids in completing it and not just relying on ChatGPT or some other artificial intelligence device to do the thinking for them. So, for example, if we've been working on dividing fractions with those models with common denominators, and you notice that students were unable to make it to the objective, they were unable to reach the goal, think about what do we need to have that student practice? Was it them finding the least common multiple? Was that the issue? Okay, if that was the issue, then that's what their homework could be related to. If that student just needs more practice with dividing the fractions, maybe you want this particular student to focus on making sense of the models. Let that be their homework. Maybe another student has the models down pat. They know their multiples. They're able to create equivalent fractions, right? But then when it comes to the dividing, maybe they're making minor errors and they just need a little bit more support. Well, I'm going to assign them homework that directly relates to what it is they need. And it's going to take time to do this. This is where you really have to leverage your PLC, your professional learning community, and you guys have to divide and conquer and say, okay, I am going to work on this week. I am going to create the homework for these different areas because I know this is what we're teaching. And these are the areas or the spaces where students tend to have challenges. So I'm going to go ahead and have the homework prepared. I'm going to have it prepared so that it's ready to go. Whenever I was in a classroom, I did a lot of digital homework, things where students could get immediate feedback. And because it was less time for me to spend on grading. Now, here's the thing. Now there's so much artificial intelligence, right? And so people are scared to do a lot of things online because they think kids will cheat. Kids will cheat if you give them paper, right? If a student wants to cheat, it does not matter what you assign them, they're going to cheat. Okay. So the solution to the cheating is to hook the students into the learning. You need to help that student understand how valuable it is for them to develop these particular skills, whatever they may be at the time. You're going to have to get that buy-in from them as well as from the parents. And if you really can get the buy-in from the parents can support at home by asking those questions while they're working, by making sure they're giving them a dedicated space within their home to do the homework, right? So you have to leverage all of your resources, all of the stakeholders to help make the homework successful. But students using AI or not typically completing the homework, I don't think that is a reason to not assign it, especially when you know kids need the additional practice. Okay. So I went off on a tangent a little bit. I'm going to bring you back. So again, the data that you collect should tell you who is ready for the next step, who needs the small group support, which concepts need to be retaught, what kind of homework would be meaningful. When we're doing our lesson plans a week in advance, that doesn't mean that's going to be the final plan because we know that whenever we go into that classroom, we have to adjust to the needs of our students in real time sometimes, right? So if I go in there today and I teach and something does not hit the way I need to, I may have to make an adjustment. And I'm going to adjust it in my plan so that it reflects what took place in the classroom. So, in other words, the exit ticket feeds your respond phase. It closes one loop and immediately opens the next. Okay. One of the biggest challenges that teachers face is the variability of curriculum design. Some districts have curriculum, some districts don't have curriculum. For those that do, some programs like Open Up Resources, which is one of my personal favorites, have strong activity and lesson syntheses built in. It's built in for you. Other curriculums include a few end-of-lesson questions, but they don't walk you through an actual synthesis. It may say something like, do a turn and talk. That is a great opportunity for you to synthesize because students are already thinking about a prompt. They're getting ready to turn to a partner. Now, when you come back together, what are the big ideas that you want to hit before you shift to the next task in your lesson? And some curriculums leave the closure out entirely, expecting teachers to invent it themselves. But here's the truth. No matter what your curriculum does or does not include, the closure cannot be skipped. If students worked hard to understand something, they deserve the moment where it all comes together. And you deserve the clarity that comes from high quality exit ticket data. The other thing that I want to emphasize here is imagine you had a class where you've gone through, let's say you've gone through 2 or 3 tasks, and there's some students in there who were not proficient in the first task. And maybe in the second task, they got a little bit closer, but they still didn't get there. And then the third task, maybe they got it. They're right there on the cusp of it. That synthesis is going to allow you to clarify things, right, that they have conceptions of. It is going to allow you to take them a step further before you release them to the actual exit ticket. So it's important that you give them the opportunity to think about it. And this is also a really good place for you to do things like stronger and clearer each time. So imagine that you provided your class with a prompt. You give students time to reflect. And I want you to think about those few students who the first task, they were not proficient. The second task, they got a little bit closer, but they still weren't there. And maybe that third task, they were right there on the cusp. Now, this is going to give them a time to reflect on what their takeaways are from the lesson based on whatever prompt that you give them. Then they can go meet with 2 partners. Sometimes you might have to pick those partners, okay? Sometimes it could be random, but if you really want to help them grow, it may be useful to pair them with people who are just above where they are so they can pull them up just a little bit more, right? Maybe help them understand just a little bit more just through those conversations. And then after they meet with those 2 partners, they come back to their desk and guess what they're doing? They are revising their initial prompt. And some kids might not have an initial prompt because they didn't make it. They didn't understand, but they'll have a final one. They will have a final one because you've intentionally paired them with 2 different people who will allow their thinking to grow, who will have some type of conversation with them that will allow their thinking to grow, their understanding to bloom. So every lesson should feel like a full circle. You activated students with a clear purpose. You instructed with intention using tasks, facilitation, and engagement to drive learning forward. You included some of those acceleration strategies to provide students with access. And now in the closure, you're letting students own the learning. You want them to name their progress and reflect on their growth. Closure ties the bow. It tells students, you learned something today. You came to school to do something more than socialize. You learned something, you can explain it, and you can use it again. So as you head back into your classrooms or your planning time, here's your challenge. Build closure into every single lesson. Even if it's only 2 minutes, even if it's one question, even if it's just what's one thing that clicked for you today. Small moments create big clarity. And when you close the loop with intention, you set students up to walk into tomorrow's lesson with confidence. That's how we make math happen. One full circle moment at a time. Talk to you guys soon.